June 4th budget work session of, it's not a budget work session, it's a work session of the Lynbrook Board of Education. Let's begin with the salute to the flag. If we can have a flag, please, up. Mr. Yaker, when the flag's up, if you could lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for roll call, Terry. Everyone is here. Before we get into our conversation about September and the reopening plans and the great work that's been done by our administration, their staff, and their committees, and you're going to hear about that in a little bit. You know, one of the issues this administration and the board has always been told about is communication. And I think it's been very impressive, the efforts that the administration and the staff has gone through to make sure that we are keeping this community up to date in all the issues that are taking place. So in addition to getting weekly updates from the administrators and your building principals, the board has been meeting every week solely for the purposes of making sure we clarify the information that's given out to the community. So some of the issues that have come up that we're looking to clarify now are, for instance, on tomorrow night, our seniors will have their awards virtual presentation, which will be at 7 p.m. You'll be able to find a link tomorrow to that on our website. Additionally, on Monday, we'll have the varsity dinner, which will also be virtual at 7 o'clock. There will be a link there also on the website for that. As we know, the prom, as we were notified last week, has been canceled. It was nice to know. I've gotten a lot of feedback from people in the community. There's a lot of effort going on by the families of the senior class. They're trying to put something together for them. We appreciate that. Unfortunately, one of the issues we do have, and I think it's important that we express that to the community, is that the prom was scheduled to take place at Mill Ridge Inn. That's an institution we've had the prom at 4 times over the last 8 years. Unfortunately, in addition to all the other frustrations our senior class has gone in and suffered through, to add insult to injury, the Mill Ridge Inn has at this time refused to return the security deposit that was put down by our senior class for that event. So that is just one other headache that we have been dealing with. And of course, if anybody in the community, especially those senior class parents, want to contact the Mill Ridge Inn, the contact person there is Debbie Herder, Herder. But that's an ongoing issue that our administration has worked very hard to try to get back, because obviously, you know, the governor has made it impossible for us to hold that event. In addition to that, for our senior class other events, we know that the intention is to hold a traditional graduation in July, and hopefully the governor will at some point announce that. You know, he's opened up the beaches and the supermarkets and the Costco's and the day camps, but we're all eagerly awaiting for him to let us know that we can have a socially distancing traditional graduation. In addition to that, our seniors on June 15th will be able to pick up, when they drop off their tablets, their cap and gowns. And then on the 16th, we'll have a nice ceremony with their parents, that there'll be a link for them to sign up with their parents for the right time slot to come into the building and have another little mini ceremony. And in addition to that, a company has been retained to provide a virtual graduation for the senior class that will have speeches from our students as well as commentary from the different students, each one of the different graduates in that class. The next issue we have is the election coming up. There's been a lot of questions brought up about what's going on and how that's happening. Ballots have been coming in. We appreciate the efforts that's taking place. As you know, you either want to mail that in as soon as you can, or you want to hand deliver it. You know, Terry will help me go through there were some questions about what's supposed to happen with the ballot. Everyone will get an envelope, or should have an envelope like this. Inside is the one that you returned. Inside of that, you'll find the white sheet, the instructions, and your actual ballot. The way this gets filled out is to make sure you're clear. On the side, there's 4 propositions. So for instance, if you were going to fill that out and you want to support your community and vote yes, you'd be able to go in here and circle yes in each one of those 4 areas. On the other side are the candidates or the write-in. You choose the 2 candidates, so you could write it in. Nothing else can be written on this document. Nothing else. No commentary, no thoughts. And the boxes have to be filled in properly. After you do that, you fold that back up. It goes back in the envelope that has the name on it. It gets put back in there. One of the most important things is to make sure once you put that back in, you sign and date the back of this. If you send this back in and it's not signed, they will not open it. Your vote will not count. After you complete that, you take that document, you put it back in this envelope, and that's what gets put back into the mailbox, or that you hand deliver it. Terry, was that done well? Yes, I can't see her. Yes, if not, I got a future in QVC. So that should address all of the issues. Again, the purpose of the board meeting like this is we hear about communication. You get updates every week, and we take the time to go out. Dr. Burek, and then Mrs.
Yes, Mr. Belmont, one more event that's coming up that I don't want us to forget is next Thursday is the Parents and Friends of Music Dinner, which is always a special night. There will be a link on the Parents and Friends of Music webpage, and that starts at 7 o'clock next Thursday.
Thank you, Dr. Burek. Mrs. Marcus?
The only other thing I wanted to add was if people want to drop them off, it's a very easy process. You ring the buzzer, and right inside the doorway is a lockbox. So you literally just go in, put the envelopes into the lockbox, and leave. It takes a minute.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. Anything else from the board on any of these topics? If not, Dr. Burek?
Thank you, Mr. Belmont. Before we begin with the plan for September, the presentation that we're going to give tonight, if you allow me to just take a moment to make a comment regarding the current events in our nation. I had asked Ms. Mitchell, who oversees our mental health services, to send resources out to families during this trying time. I just want everyone to know that the Lynbrook Public Schools has always, we strive to maintain a safe sanctuary for our students. It's unfortunate that the unrest we have seen this week has first of all occurred, and secondly, occurred during the school closure. Our support staff would have been able to see our students' faces and offer whatever help was needed to help them get through this challenge. There is clearly more work that needs to be done in our society to make it just for all. This district is one of the few districts that officially commemorates National Unity Day each October. Unfortunately, the current turmoil reminds us that we need to make sure that message is heard loud and clear of unity every single day. We want Lynbrook to be viewed as a district of character, strength, compassion, and one that is unified for all people. We want everyone to be able to count on Lynbrook for those qualities and count on us for providing a safe haven for all children in our district. As one famous American had said, a house divided cannot stand. We want to make sure that the Lynbrook Family House remains united in the support of all so that we can continue to stand tall. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. And if students are watching with their parents right now, this meeting, that one famous American, hopefully you know who said that. And if you didn't, homework assignment, please go look it up. You should know, very important statement that you should be aware of. So thank you for allowing me to make that comment. And now I'd just like to go into our presentation for September reopening. I just want to start by saying a special thank you. We established a rather large committee and then expanded it into many subcommittees to put together a plan for September should all school districts be required to continue this remote learning model. We all know, and we've said it over the past several weeks, that we have evolved our remote learning plan, and I think we've all learned that remote learning is not ideal, that having kids in our school building, having them be with our teachers all day, learning all day long is an optimal situation for education in our school district, in any school district. However, we've been put to the task of implementing a remote model learning, and what we wanted to do with this committee is to develop a more robust program for students, whether we are asked to start remote right off in September. If nothing changes from where we are right now, we may have to start right off in September, or at some point, if there is a resurgence of COVID-19, if there's something that happens again and if we're able to start school normally, But then maybe in November, maybe in December, maybe in January, we're told we now have to go to remote learning. We want to be able to say the next day we go into this plan. So once again, I just want to thank all the committee members who I gave them a very aggressive time limit of really less than 1 month, where we had to meet and we had to really have a intense dialogue, exploration, discovery, really learn what is good, what is not good, and put it all together so that we can put a package together for the board to see tonight. Once again, I just want to reiterate, this is for a full remote learning. We are still waiting, and I cannot emphasize this enough. We are still waiting for guidance from the governor. You hear him regularly, and we're given little bits of information every so often, but still we have no final plan, no final guidance for what September is to look like. Will we be able to come back? Will the same social distancing guidelines that we're living in right now, will we be expected to implement those in September? All of that guidance will hinge on what our final decision will be. So what we're presenting tonight is if we were on full remote, but I just want parents to be aware that it may be full remote. It may be we're all in and we have to figure out how to handle all of our students in our buildings in September. That would be another plan. And it may be a hybrid of some combination of remote and having students in our schools. So those will be the next explorations. But right now, we wanted to make sure we had a solid package for remote learning in September or anytime we may need to implement it. So with that being said, Dr. Lynch is going to advance the screens for our committee. You see additional people on the screen because the additional administrators you see were chairpeople of subcommittees. So we're each going to present subcommittees that we chaired. There are several subcommittees because we really wanted to think of all the different avenues that were so important to building a model for remote learning. Number one is communication, and Mr. Belmont had just said we are trying to increase our communication. We're holding these weekly board meetings to keep the community informed. We have weekly bulletins from our principals, and that is going to continue. Those were things that we've learned will work better for our community. And you'll see right now on the communication screen, we saw this communication in 3 areas: communication to the district at large, communication to the parent, and communication to the student. So district-wide, you see you're receiving my weekly bulletin, and we're going to continue that fashion so that we'll keep you up to date with any of the latest information that may come down from the state or just changes within the district that we need parents to be more aware of. Parent communication, the principal sends weekly bulletins to the parents to let them know what individual buildings are happening, what is going on in their buildings regularly. Included would be a video message of assignments via a standardized learning management system. And Mr. McDermott is going to speak about that. You'll see that as a running thread. A standardized learning management system we have discovered would be more helpful to our parents, our students, and even our teachers in the way of organizing all the information. We applaud parents for trying to juggle so many different assignments, so many different logins, because there have been different applications and everything, and we know it was difficult. We realized that if we had a standardized learning management system, we would be able to deliver our messages and have improved communication between the teacher and the parent, as well as teacher and the student. So we felt that that would be important to have those messages of assignments with that. As well as we'll have daily morning announcements, just as the kids see every day, daily morning announcements, the parents would be able to see it, the students would be able to see it. And as you see, the last category is students, certainly not least, they would receive a daily morning announcement. We're trying to bring some normalcy back. So every single day when kids are in school, there's a daily morning announcement. Our September plan would unveil a daily morning announcement at that point also. And once again, you see the learning management system. We would use that to deliver live as well as recorded lessons where the teachers would be able to provide feedback as another form of communication to students. So those were areas and recommendations that we would like to continue and add on to what we're currently doing now for next year's plan. Dr. Lynch, the next area. We realize also with remote learning, there are some policies that we need adjusting. Currently, all of our board policies deal with the traditional school setting. So we have the computer network, electronic records, and acceptable use. We needed to look at that and add an area for remote learning, because learning right now has taken place inside the classroom. So obviously, remote learning is taking place in the home. So we needed to make some adjustments with that policy to include the homebound instruction. We actually created a whole new policy called acceptable use for remote learning that is more detailed as far as what are the expectations when you have live lessons, and what's the conduct and the behavior that is expected on both the staff as well as student side. We have student attendance. Obviously, it's very easy to take attendance in school when you have the child sitting right in front of you, but in a remote learning environment, student attendance takes on a whole different format. So we have suggested language in policy for that when we need to implement remote learning. And then this other key one was very interesting, child abuse in an educational setting. Unfortunately, you've heard the news where there's an increase in domestic abuse and reports not being made because no one knows what's happening in the home right now. Currently, if a staff member notices something that's wrong with a child, we're mandated reporters, and we would very easily make a call because we see something in a child or we notice something in a child and we want to get that child help. Well, during a remote learning situation, we don't necessarily see the child. So we are recommending some language there to extend the educational setting in a remote learning to include the home, so that as mandated reporters, we can continue to carry out our duties. And then student records. Obviously, when you have remote learning, there are student records that are created once you have videos and you have camera shots of students. So there are some changes in student records. So currently the board has all of these policies. I sent them home to them with the recommended changes. At next week's meeting, the board meeting, we will have a first reading, as long as the board has no objections to any of that language. At the first reading, any community member can take a look at the policies and can provide feedback on that as well. We always have 2 readings for policies, so we will continue to follow that process for this. But those are the recommended changes that the policy subcommittee made. And those were the 2 committees that I actually chaired. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynch now, because we had a devices and equity subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Burek. So yes, we had a great subcommittee where we looked at devices and the equity of having devices throughout the district. We knew that certainly the district has had for many years a 6 through 12 one-to-one program. So we found that those devices were already in the home. But really, with a lot of parent input on this committee, we started to look at how can we make the remote experience the same playing field for everyone. So these were the recommendations that came out of the committee. So the first recommendation is to provide a durable and developmentally appropriate device for grades K through 2. So those kids currently do not have a one-to-one model, but really with the possibility of going all remote, we would be purchasing devices for K1 and 2. We had some robust discussion about what that device should be. We had considered iPads, but really with the parent input, it was decided that we really want it to be the same device. So a parent does not want to have their kindergartner to have a certain device and then the 11th grader to have another different device. So we'll be putting a 3190, which is our kind of like our typical device, in the hands of K1 and 2. And the one thing that we would do is we're going to put it into what's called tablet mode. So it starts to look and feel a little bit like an iPad, so that the kids who are very used to touching and swiping are able to do so. We would provide the same 3190s to all kids in grades 3 through 5. For those of you that listened to the budget work session last week or 2 weeks ago, you'll know that we had already planned to replace all the devices in 4th and 5th grade. So this is just really continuing that down to 3rd grade also. And then we would re-image and install software on the 6 through 12 devices. So right now, I know the principals have communicated to parents that we need to get all of our devices back, and that's for an exact purpose. So what we're going to be doing is taking the existing 6 through 12 fleet, we're going to be re-imaging them, and we're going to be putting software on it that allows us to basically service the device in the home. And this will really be, since it's all the same fleet at this point, this will be K through 12. Our technicians will have the ability to remote wipe, to install software remotely, and to service it otherwise, so that people will not necessarily having to always come to Tablet Depot in order to get things taken care of. We want to be able to, one of the things that we looked at is some of our higher end classes in the high school, the technology classes, the art classes, the science classes, their software, a lot of kids did not have access to some of that higher end software. So we're going to provide remote connections to that specialized software so that the kids will be able to remote in, and they will have full experiential desktops, so they'll be able to do their SolidWorks, they'll be able to do some of the Adobe products that they're used to, and really create as normal a classroom experience as they would have if they were in the classroom in 209. We did have a great discussion about non-computer based materials. So there are classes like drawing and painting. There are classes that don't require computers, and we should really be looking at creating those supplies in the homes to create that class also as normal as a regular classroom would be. As the parents of 6th through 12th graders know, we require an insurance deposit on all district-owned computers, really, because the parent becomes fiscally liable for the device. So that's one thing when it's a calculator, but when it is a $600 computer, we give the parent the ability to buy a $27 insurance policy so that they don't have to be on the hook for the full $600, but only for that insurance, recognizing that there are families for whom that would be a hardship. We need to make provisions for free and reduced lunch and milk program kids to be able to afford that insurance. This was an issue that we looked at, and we really had to do some more work about this. The program is only as good as the home Wi-Fi and the home computer connection. So we need to assess the access to the necessary bandwidth for remote learning to take place in our homes. And Altice Optimum are working on a program. Unfortunately, it used to be free, but now they are deciding that that free program is over, and now they're offering it as a pay-for service for districts, and we are beginning to look into that. And then finally, our 6 through 12 program had computer aides working with students so they were able to troubleshoot some issues at home. We wanted to expand that model to include the elementary students. And just as we had Tablet Depot, where people were able to drop off devices at Lynbrook High School in order to be serviced, we see an expansion of that model into the elementary schools, so that there'll be mini Tablet depots, so that you don't have to drive all the way to Lynbrook High School. You could just go to Waverly Park. You could go to West End, drop your device off. An aide would be there to help do some triage. And then if there was some major work done, it would be forwarded to our technicians to take care of it. So those were the issues from the Device and Equity Committee.
Thank you. The next committee is the Learning Management System Committee. As I mentioned earlier, we felt that communication, the delivery of instruction, all of that would be greatly enhanced if we implemented a learning management system. And I had asked Mr. McDermott to please chair that subcommittee. And could you report now on your recommendations?
Our subcommittee started its work with some basic research on what other districts in our region are using for their learning management systems. And after we got that information, we decided which ones made possible matches for our needs. But before we invited anybody to come do a presentation to us, we tried to identify what our goals were for the learning management systems. We wanted to do some thinking on our own. And we decided that any management system that we approached needed to have our instructional goals in mind, which means it needed to integrate instructional tools, and it needed to coordinate with what our curriculum is. Additionally, we wanted to make sure that it met our organizational goals. We found that organization and communication is extremely important, and we wanted to make sure that whatever product we had would meet those needs. And the third goal we wanted to address before we got any presentations done for us, we want to identify that communication, as has been mentioned a few times during this evening's presentation, is that communication is critical. So we want to make sure that the tool would allow for communication from teachers to students and from teachers to parents. At that point, we invited several presenters to come in and meet with us. And we had some very good conversations with the product vendors, but also amongst ourselves. And we're still deliberating. And the key factors that we continue to discuss are when we're thinking about adopting a single LMS or possibly a dual platform LMS, we want to make sure that it addressed the age appropriateness, meaning that the students, it may not be a one-size-fits-all solution. So we want to make sure that the tools that we choose are appropriate for the learners that they're targeted for. And a key piece to the puzzle also was whatever management system we are considering must integrate with our student information system, in our case, PowerSchool. And we need the tool to allow for supervision, but also for support. So we need to make sure that whatever platform we're choosing has a infrastructure that allows for those to take place. And the last item is a key. It must integrate with the resources that we're already using extensively within our district. Primarily Office 365 is our productivity suite, but also the online subscriptions that make up a big part of what we do. Examples of that would be BrainPop, Discovery Education, and Nearpod. And we want to make sure that whatever system we use integrates these tools, but also a key factor we're looking for is to make sure that it will allow easily able to access the usernames and passwords associated with those. Because a complaint that has arisen during our remote learning experience is the many separate usernames and passwords for our different products. So our learning management system that we're looking for should help us to eliminate those challenges. Our committee is still working, and we have additional meetings coming up, and we should have a recommendation we will make hopefully in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Once we have that shell, basically, or that window for our delivery of instruction or materials and our communication model for between the district and the home, obviously, what is it going to look like? What's the content going to look like? How is the instruction going to be delivered? And that's where we talk about really the nuts and bolts of the elementary and the secondary curriculum of how we're going to have that instruction implemented. So I had asked Dr. Belekas to chair the two committees for the elementary and the secondary. So I'm going to ask Dr. Belekas to now speak about his committee work.
Thank you, Dr. Burak. I know that both committees work very hard in putting together a plan, and most of the topics that we discussed actually overlapped between the two committees, and again, just talked about them in the age-appropriate manner. The two in-person models with the full-time and part-time that Dr. Burak mentioned at the very beginning, we talked about concepts about them, but we knew that guidance would be coming from Albany that would probably change those ideas anyway. So we did talk about the logistics, the structure, the engagement and motivation in those areas, but we did spend most of our time on the virtual. So in a minute, we'll be talking about that more in depth. The specifics that we discussed with each of the committees were synchronous learning, which synchronous would mean live instruction, everyone doing the same thing at the same time. Asynchronous learning, where kids would be able to complete their assignments at their own pace. And the blended learning model that would take on components of both the synchronous and asynchronous learning. As part of the discussion, we also talked about curriculum compacting and remediation. We realized that we would be trying to make up some of the lost time this year, and some topics may need to be revisited. So we do need to compact our curriculum in such a way as to allow us that as we teach next year to build in and bring in some of those prerequisite skills that students may be lacking right now, that we can make sure that those are addressed. We also talked about extra help for students that need it, and providing that at both the secondary and the elementary levels. And at the elementary level, we did talk about the role of the general education teaching assistants and how we could better utilize their expertise during our instructional models. Dr. Lynch, if you don't mind, if we could flip over to the elementary, please. So the elementary virtual model here, as Dr. Burak had said at the very beginning, we are looking to establish a very structured school day. The children need to know exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it. So the school day would start at 8:35 a.m. with announcements from the principal, very similar to what we do when we're in school. Following that, there would be a live daily meeting with the classroom teacher. So the classroom teacher can establish what's happening for the rest of the day for each of the students And again, the LMS will help keep them organized so that you know what they're doing and when. The one feature that we have for every day in the elementary school in the general classroom would be an ELA and a math lesson. So also we'll be getting math and ELA instruction daily. Once in the 6-day cycle, they will also be receiving a social studies lesson and an SEL/health lesson. We realize that it is important that those lessons be live at this time, given the social emotional needs of our students at home. We will also be trying to cycle around the times so that we can give some opportunities for small group instruction. We do know that when we're in the classroom, we do a lot of things in small groups, and we want to give those children the opportunity to interact in small groups and with their teacher with that more intimate setting. So there is flexibility in the schedule to allow that, and also to have a teaching assistant in those settings as well, which will allow us to break the children into smaller groups and have more lively discussions with them. The other features in the schedule, we will be doing asynchronous activities that are actually mirroring what I just said as well. I know I'm jumping around a little bit to the bottom of the slide, but as we said, there are going to be daily English and math lessons live. There will be also daily English and math opportunities to learn outside of that setting in an asynchronous manner so that the kids are getting instruction in math and English both live and during that asynchronous time. And again, same thing with the social studies and the health, that would be more along the lines of once a cycle. During the school day, you know, students are rotating to different specials when they're in our buildings. So we will be doing similar type of things with the special area classes. So the sciences and the library classes, the arts, the musics, they'll be rotating through the schedule on different days. And again, that daily meeting in the LMS will make sure that children know when those live sessions are. And any student that's receiving support services will be able to also receive those services live throughout the day. And again, these schedules will all be posted through the LMS. Again, the LMS is becoming our hub for communication, so people know exactly when and where things are happening. Another piece that we know is very important to both our students and our families is that communication with our classroom teachers. So on a rotating basis, approximately every 2.5 weeks or so, based on class sizes, the classroom teacher will be reaching out to each family and their students to check in for about 15 minutes. So each day, they're built into the teacher's schedule is 30 minutes of check-in time, so they can reach out to 2 families and students a day to check in and see how things are going and how we can best support their needs at home. Like I had mentioned before, too, there will be scheduled extra help opportunities for students who need that support. Dr. Lynch, if we can transfer to the secondary, thank you. So at the secondary level, again, we wanted to make sure that there is a very recognizable structure to their school day. At 8:05 a.m., the high school administration will be starting announcements. After the announcements are over, we are going to begin into a rotating cycle of classes. So every other day, we'll receive all of the even classes or all of the odd classes. So students would be receiving 5 periods of live instruction daily. And so they're not staring at a screen all day long, which is something that was very important to the members of the committee. We are going to build a little bit of time in between the courses and when they begin. So the first period or second period on the opposite day classes would begin at 9 a.m. The next class would be at 10, at 11. The 12 o'clock hour, we are leaving open for students to have lunch. The 1 o'clock hour and the 2 o'clock hour would round out the 5 periods of instruction for the day. And again, for students who need that extra support, there will be extra help opportunities available to them. Another thing that we felt was very important, you know, when we just talked about having even and odd schedules, we're talking about 90 days of instruction during the school year. We know that our students are accustomed to having 180 days of instruction. We are not really sure what they're going to be facing at the end of the year. We know that the AP exams look very different this year. We don't know if they're going to look more traditional next year. We didn't have to sit for Regents exams at the end of the courses this year. We're not sure if the Regents exams will be returning and in what format they'll be returning next year. So we do need to make sure that we're covering a 180-day curriculum. So in between lessons, we need to maximize what we're doing with that time. You know, when a teacher is teaching in a classroom, they get to walk around the classroom. They get to see what students are doing. They can check in and they can give students feedback as they're learning. on the computer screen, that's a little bit more difficult to do. So we're going to make sure that in between lessons, we're giving children independent assignments where we can check to see that they understood what happened during that live lesson and give them some feedback to make sure that they're growing in the subject areas. Also, too, as I said about trying to utilize time in between, we want to do what's called a flipped classroom. So students can watch videos, they can read assignments, they can go and do an internet activity in between lessons, so they're better prepared for the next lesson and they can hit the ground running during that live time so we can maximize its usage. And thank you very much to all of the participants on the committee. And we really appreciate the students at the secondary level who gave us very good insight. And thank you, Dr. Bjork.
Thank you. Now that we have a sketch of an elementary and a secondary model, this is also our students with special needs, students with IEP, students with varying needs, our ENL learners, so that there needs to be some specific differentiation for those. So therefore, we had a subcommittee to help discuss those topics and how best we can provide instructions to them during a remote learning. So actually, a formal introduction now, our first presentation, even before July 1st, our new special ed director, Susan Sabin, I had asked her to chair this subcommittee and dive right in, and she did wholeheartedly. So welcome, Susan, and can you just share the recommendations and the work of your subcommittee?
Yes, thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. Our subcommittee was made up of staff, administrators. We had our ENL staff and really wonderful contributions from the parents as well. Differentiating instruction is important, as was already mentioned, for special education students, ENL students. But what we're finding also is that in this new learning environment, differentiation of instruction is important to all learners, things that, you know, we certainly didn't expect when we started this. So differentiated instruction provides access to the instruction to students who may need to have it presented in a different manner. You're going to hear a lot of overlap between things that you've already heard about technology, communication. All of those things are very important. We had a lot of discussion about that in our committee as well. When we look at what the new learning management system tools are, we already heard that we're really going to rely on that for differentiating instruction through technology. And once that system is selected, we would be providing professional development. It's important for everyone on staff to have an understanding of what those tools are and how they can help our learners to have information presented in a different manner. And we're going to rely really heavily on those professionals, once they're trained in what those tools are, to be able to turnkey that, not only providing the instruction to students on how they're going to use those tools for differentiation of instruction, but also to parents. Again, we have really had a lot of contribution from our parents. They gave us good suggestions on saying, you know, what it is that they'll need to support their students at home. So that was one of the suggestions. And, you know, we're talking a lot about technology, but there's a low-tech toolbox that we generated ideas for. And, you know, our students in, let's say, a resource room or inclusion, those type of classrooms, they have a lot of manipulatives and graphic organizers. These are all different ways that we differentiate instruction. Those are the kinds of tools that they're going to need to have available to them at home. So we talked about having those toolboxes available. And then to differentiate even further, we understand the population of our life skills students. And again, parent made a really good suggestion that they have those tools at home. So when we're talking about developing career skills, vocational skills, there are going to be different tools that those students are going to need in order to support those goals. I already spoke about instruction to students, and that's going to come from the teachers on how to use that technology. And in addition, parent toolboxes. So we had a suggestion that ready links should be available. There was further discussion with Mr. McDermott today about what might be embedded in that learning management system that would be parent user friendly. So they're really going to need to know how to support their students in using that new technology. And then also behavior and motivation, keeping students engaged. When we're relying on parents to be able to support their children at home in keeping them engaged, we want to be able to provide them with the tools that they need for that, as well as translation. So our ENL students, those parents need that information as well. So giving them ready links on where they can go to find translation for the information that they might need. So it was a really great collaboration. I really thank the committee. We came up with some good recommendations, and we're looking forward to some continued work once we have that learning management systems chosen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next group, actually, concerns teachers and administrators and the duties that we have. Obviously, the observation process and supervision of our staff and the instruction that takes place in the classroom. Obviously, it takes on a whole new form when everybody is at home engaged in remote learning. So I had asked Dr. Berman, our Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, to please head a subcommittee to discuss our observation model during remote learning. So Dr. Berman?
Thank you. Good evening. So our committee members met to talk about the observation process and the documents or the rubric that we use during that process. So the committee is recommending that there are two different manners in which to conduct observations. The first you can see is that we need to observe using on-site instruction. So that's currently what's happening right now on a regular basis, where teachers are in the classroom, students are in the classroom, and the rubric that we use is the Danielson rubric. But the second way to observe teachers would be in an off-site situation where off-site instruction is taking place. And that would be where the teachers and the students are at home. So what we did is we needed to look at the current Danielson rubric that we have and do a deep dive with the criteria that's embedded within that rubric and identify all of the areas that were appropriate in the rubric for observation purposes, but then to also consider some of the areas that might not be as appropriate. Two areas that we did focus on that were no longer appropriate in this type of situation would be looking at the arrangement of furniture. So in the classroom, when the teachers are in the classroom with the students, children can be grouped as a whole class. The teachers can have the children push desks together to do small group work. That's not something that's going to happen in remote learning. So that was one area that we looked to remove from the current rubric. We also looked at the grouping of students. So again, in the classroom, the teacher may be providing instruction to the whole class, but then recognizes there's certain content information that needs to be either reviewed or have a different focus with a certain group of children, or need to be able to group children together according to their understanding of the information. And we can see that occur in the classroom. That's, again, something that we would not necessarily see in a remote learning situation. So those are two areas that we look to focus on to say really could not be part of this process. So to date, the committee is reviewing the final version of this revised rubric that will be used during this remote learning process. Our next step is to be able to review another observation rubric that we have that it's for our pupil personnel staff, which would be our psychologists, our social workers, our guidance counselors, and to go through the same process and analyze the exact rubric and see what changes need to be made so that we can better and more appropriately observe the staff. Our additional recommendations at this time is to be able to say that the observations that do take place should be announced, that the administrators would need access to be able to sit in the virtual classes for the lessons that are taking place. And also, we know that training and professional development needs to take place. So both the administrative staff and the teachers would need to be able to be provided information so that they understand what the expectations are with these new rubrics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berman. And you just mentioned staff development, and you've heard training quite a bit this evening. There's a lot of professional development in many different areas. And once again, Mr. McDermott was asked to chair the subcommittee on staff development. Mr. McDermott?
Yeah, good evening. This has been a recurring theme. We have a lot of great ideas we're looking to move forward, but all those things are contingent on making sure that the users, all different forms of users, are able to leverage those systems. One of the components the staff development subcommittee is going to be focused in upon is the training that's going to be needed to support the learning management system or systems that we may adopt. We want to do the initial training for that before the last day of school, and that happens to be June the 17th. So we're going to do as much as we can while we still have everyone in the buildings, well, not in the buildings, but still with us. And then we're going to offer expanded training opportunities that are going to go on during the summertime. Those might take a number of different forms, but we're going to give initial training and then we're going to layer in opportunities during the summertime. We feel this is going to be very important for us to hit the ground running in September. The other part to it is we need to also focus in on the tools that we already have in our hands, the distance learning tools we've been leveraging so far. And Dr. Belekas was talking about synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And synchronous instructional tools would be things such as WebEx or Microsoft Teams, which are both give an opportunity for live instruction and live feedback to and from students. We will continue to support those. And the asynchronous tools we've been using quite a bit during the school closure has been Nearpod, Bunsy, and PowerPoint Recorder. And we're going to continue to provide support for those so teachers are able to leverage those resources so they can do more flipped and hybrid type of instructional opportunities. We're going to offer those over the summer as well. And we're going to also, in September, we're going to offer supplemental training for our learning management systems. One of the key components that I did mention during our LMS discussion was the ability for the LMS vendor to provide staff development resources to us is an important factor in our decision making. So we're going to be leaning into their resources as well as the resources we already have in district. Now, it doesn't appear on this slide. There's another very important piece to the puzzle, and that is training opportunities for the parents. In this remote learning opportunity, the support the parents are providing at home is vital. So it's important that whatever new technology we bring to the table, we give opportunities for parents to be able to make themselves conversant with that technology and make sure that they're able to do that. So we're going to try to provide resources in a number of different locations, housed within the LMS itself, but also we may push out resources through parent links and ways that the parents are already comfortable receiving that information so we can make resources and training opportunities available to them. And we're also hoping to ultimately hold some live parent academies to support this as well. So all these things are exciting opportunities we're looking to move forward with. And we're going to provide professional development for our staff members, but also for the parents in the community and ultimately for the students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. And so you ended with parents. So a very important part of the school district is the involvement of our PTA. And I asked Dr. Lee to please head the committee on PTA and the outside groupings of our facilities and how that would look like in a remote learning environment. So Dr. Lee?
Thank you, Dr. Burek, and good evening, everyone. For the PTA subcommittee, our members reviewed events on the district calendar for the upcoming year for all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, and agreed upon the following recommendations and changes that we thought would enable PTA to continue working as a viable fundraising organization that makes valuable instructional and cultural contributions to our schools. Our first order of business was to move events like dances and picnics that were originally scheduled for the beginning of the year to the spring, with the hope of being able to still have those events for our students and their families. Moving forward, we will provide virtual assemblies for students. All general PTA, PTA council, and compact meetings will be virtual. PTA council evening presentations will be virtual. And just to elaborate on this particular event, we did have conversations about focusing our offerings on mental health and well-being. We also looked at some of our traditional fundraising initiatives and identified things like spirit wear, book fairs, and holiday boutiques that could be switched to an online store. PTA communication to parents will be uploaded to the existing virtual backpacks, school websites, and of course, we would also continue with using email and social media. The movie fundraisers will change to a drive-in format. Depending on what's happening with teacher access to buildings, those nice treats like a welcome back breakfast or appreciation luncheon will be delivery of food only with no parent volunteers. As a committee, we also agreed that it is not necessary for parent volunteers to have access to our buildings if we are in distance learning mode. And the last matter that we discussed was building usage by outside groups. But at this time, it really is too early to determine how we will handle this. And I just want to say that it was a real honor to work with such dedicated, caring parents, and I thank them for giving up their time and serving on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And certainly last but not least, Mr. Pilata was asked to chair a subcommittee on clubs and events. As you know, our fine and performing arts area, they produce quite a few events, special events for us, where our children are performers, we have great audiences, and we look forward to it. And I personally missed so many of them while we've been on this school closure. So Mr. Pilata, you started to take a look at this. Could you please report where your subcommittee is now?
We'll be making our recommendations over the next weeks and months. As a clearer understanding of what acceptable performance practices and the approved gathering protocols comes into focus for September and beyond. I'm on a number of committees from NISMA, NISCAIM, all county organizations that I know many of you are aware of, and we're working diligently to come up with how performances and performance practices can take place. In the meantime, however, this committee, and we will start to meet actively over the next few weeks, we'll look at these two areas, the clubs and the events areas. So, of course, we want to maintain clubs, as many as possible, hopefully all of them, and see how we can adapt them to the most current situation that we'll be facing. We'll be assessing meeting congregation options, whether it be in-person small gatherings, if possible, or, as you've heard from many committees this evening, virtual meeting options. We'll also look at the availability and the usage of larger meeting spaces, areas that may be favorable to appropriate distancing, if that's the situation that we find ourselves in. With events, of course, the music area, we're already talking about how to transition to small ensembles, since large group performance will probably not be possible, but we still hold out. So small ensembles, chamber performances, and the like. As far as our school musical, that is scheduled for November. So I met with our directors just a few weeks ago, and we agreed to look at such performances, reviews, and concert versions, which are out there for very popular shows. So if a full-scale musical cannot be mounted, we can look at options that we can do, which leads into the next bullet, recorded and or live streams. And we'll look at those options and that viability. Of course, then we have to tie that in with supportive technology to see how we can go about doing those, in order to do performances like that at an effective level, we have to have the right microphones, cameras, and those types of things. So that's something we'll actively look at. If we do have any situation where we're back in school, we'll look at the availability and the use of rehearsal spaces that also would be favorable to the appropriate distancing. And then, of course, adapting, modifying all the ancillary spaces, storage spaces, common areas that would go along with that. So the committee will be getting together. We've spoken through email, so to speak, a little bit to put this together. But of course, we'll be meeting actively as more information comes through the state and the local agencies. Just before I wrap up, if I may, one amendment to an announcement made earlier regarding next Thursday's Parents and Friends of Music Awards dinner. The link actually for the dinner/ceremony will be on the Fine and Performing Arts webpage. And that webpage, of course, can be found on the district website, and you just click under departments. That's where you'll find that link. So That's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Pallotta. So at this point, that is where we stand with our recommendations. I would like to personally thank all of the parents, the staff members, administrators, teachers, teaching assistants, everyone. It really was a very involved committed group of individuals, a lot of smart individuals who brought different perspectives and different things to the table that forced us to think very carefully. As you can see, all those subcommittees, we tried to really cover all the bases as far as planning for a full package for remote learning in September. So thank you, everyone. And at this point, you know, that's where we stand right now for the board. If there are any questions.
Yeah, I think that have some. Before we get to that again, I just reinforce what you said. That was pretty extensive in a short period of time. We could see how many people were involved from the community. All the stakeholders were involved. A great deal of effort went into that and a lot of anticipation. So greatly appreciate that quickly and this early on. We know there's a lot of unknown factors. The governor still has to make some rules and guidance for us, but apparently you're on top of this and everyone has worked hard enough to give us enough plans so that no matter what happens, we can go in a certain direction. So I'll defer to some of the members now. Mrs. Marcus. Unmute, Mrs. Marcus.
Sorry. That was great. That was a lot of information. Thank you, everybody, for working so hard on this. I just had a few questions. Can you just give a little bit more of an explanation of what a learning management system is?
Sure, Mr. McDermott.
Okay. Learning management system is a computer program. Essentially, is a shell in which students and teachers are sharing a common space. And if it's integrated properly with our student information system, they will be grouped by course and by student enrollment. What it does is it allows the teacher to provide content in an organized fashion in a virtual space that the students can interact with. It can take many different forms. It could be links to Word documents, PowerPoint documents, but also interactive spaces. And also there's places where teachers can provide assignments or even assessments that give meaningful feedback directly backwards. And it has an internal communication system, so our students and teachers will be able to communicate without having to use outside things such as an email or any other external products. Also built into it will be a calendar system, so when a teacher would put an assignment in for a student, it would appear on their calendar. And so all the subject areas would automatically feed into a single place, which helps with organization for a lot of students of all different age groups. So it yields a number of different benefits for us. So we're very happy to move in this direction, and we're trying to find the right tool that will meet our needs. So as a K-12 environment is very diverse, so we want to find the right tool that will allow us to do that.
So is it?
Excuse me, one of the byproducts of this, as we've discovered and we've sat in demos, as the demos were being presented to us and that calendar function, and I saw Mrs. Hanson get very excited. One of the issues that we've been dealing with for several years now is executive functioning. And how do we help students who have difficulty with executive functioning organize themselves so that they're better prepared to engage in life beyond that this management system is one of the perfect tools that will help students do that. So that's one of the positive byproducts of that. So I'm glad you were happy with that, Mrs. Hanson. You understood the value of that.
So is it that you log on to learning management system from your tablet, from a computer, from other things outside of what the district provides?
Yes, it'll be a web-based solution. So we will be providing devices to all students, assuming our overall plan goes into effect. But if a student were to be in a situation where they couldn't have access to one of our tools, these are all web-based products, so they can access the resources from anywhere. It could be from a desktop, laptop, computer, but also the products we've been looking at so far also have apps that would function. Some of the functionality is reduced when you're onto a phone as opposed to a full-size computer, but you can communicate from any web-enabled device.
And is it, so when you log on to the learning management system, you see all of your classes, you see everything in one place, like a dashboard of sorts?
Exactly. And that's one of the things we're talking about with the different vendors. Each one has a slightly different layout and a way they form their little universe. So these are the things our committee is looking at and see which one suits our district best and meets the needs of our students. So we're at the point right now in our deliberations where the nitty-gritty details are what we're really digging into, and want to make sure that we make the right choice.
And when do we, I know we would need time to obtain it and train staff members. So when do we expect, like, what is the timeline of how much time we would need to do this?
I'm trying to be proactive, so I've gotten price quotes from all the vendors, even though we haven't selected one yet. So if we do make a selection, we will have, we'll be able to move into the next phase of adoption. So we're trying to make sure we have our paperwork in hand in case we do make a decision sooner rather than later, and that we can move forward into training our staff as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Are these programs available in other languages just for our non-English speaking? Is it something that?
Yeah, that was one of the features that we did ask the vendor is if we inserted content into it, could the program translate within the program itself to meet the needs of the particular students? The two we were looking at for our older students both do. One has more languages available than the other, but they both do it for many of the more common languages that we have, but one has quite an extensive list. So.
Thank you.
Dr. Burke, so one of the things I loved about the program was there's a lot of uncertainty to September, even with this. It's nice to see that the kids at least will know there's going to be structure to their school day. So whatever level they're at, they're going to know they're going to start their day, because I think everyone recognized that having them sleep and be off their schedule wasn't a great thing for them to do. Let me ask you, I believe you had multiple teachers that were part of these committees and were able to give their input, because it does seem in the beginning there was some uncertainty to the ability to utilize the technology, but I think we've all seen a great increase in a comfort level with that. And I know the administration has enhanced the technology that we have to help with that. So I think having all these different stakeholders in really helps us set the bar high and makes all those expectations clear to everyone. And as I said a couple of times, and as we've discussed, there is some uncertainty to what the governor will ask, and it's very possible he may leave it in our hands to do that. So what I think we appreciate is knowing that by the time we get into the summer and we have an understanding of where he's going, you have plan A, B, C, and E. So at some point over the summer, we'll be able to express that to community. Everyone's going to have plenty of time and understanding. Hey, it'll be any one of these plans. We'll let you know which one it is. And we have the ability also to go from one plan to the other if that should be necessary. Is that a fair assessment of where we're at?
Correct. And if you think about it, we have a board meeting next week, one at the end of June, and then the reorg in early July. So we have 3 meetings already on the calendar where we can continue to update the community in the hopes that the governor does provide more guidance and we can continue to move with our planning.
And I know one of the things that came up also was, and Mr. Vallado expressed, how we can try and get our arts in and our music. I know fall sports is still something that's constantly be spoken about, and Mr. Yeager's familiar with this also. There really is no understanding yet of what they're going to do. There's a multitude of suggestions they have, and as soon as we get more guidance, we'll be able to put some understanding of what that will entail. Anything else from any other board members? Yes, Mrs. Martin.
I know this is, these are preliminary recommendations, so we're still working out some of the kinks. Would there be a way at some point to maybe have a sample schedule, like a sample schedule for elementary, a sample schedule for middle school, a sample schedule for high school, so you can, parents and students can really see what their like 6-day cycle would look like, just as an example?
We can give you a sample daily. We actually already have a model of that, right, Dr. Belekas?
Sorry, yes, that is correct. We do have samples, and we could provide that easily. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, again, to Mrs. Marcus's point, I think from where we are now, from where we were in the beginning for remote learning, we are so much further ahead where other districts are. And we've all learned from that and we move forward. So the comfort level we should have as a community is to know that prior to September, we will have enough notice to know exactly what's going to happen. And should something change and should it become fluid, we will have all the plans in place to make those adjustments and things will go off very smoothly for us. So I think that's a credit to all the great work that was done by all these committee members, again, being done quite quickly.
One more question.
Yes, Ms. Marcus.
As far as, so this is if we were fully remote, when will we have recommendations if we had to do a split schedule or, some other version?
When the governor provides more guidance, we will be able to work on that.
Mrs. Hanson.
Question for Mr. McDermott, I guess. Roughly, Mr. McDermott, roughly how many kids are going to be participating in, are kids going to be participating, and if so, roughly how many in basically testing of the new systems, seeing how they work, seeing how they can navigate this new management system, and are you doing that?
You have a great question. If this was a typical adoption cycle, we would have spent 6 months going through the process we did in the last 2.5 weeks, and it would have included a student test bed where we'd have a group of students who would be our examples for this. Unfortunately, with the time frame being what it is, we're not going to have. In a traditional cycle, we would be training our staff developers who would train the teachers, and then we would bring aboard a group of students to participate. We now have, I think, 10 days left in the school year. We just don't have a time frame to complete any part of that cycle. And speaking with the administrative team, this is not the way we typically like to do business. But everyone is rolling with the circumstances that we have. So I would love to say we would do a student test experience, but I just don't believe that we have the number of days remaining on the calendar to make that happen.
Okay, so building on that question, September comes and the governor says we're not going into the classroom, or for whatever reason, we have to limit access to the classroom. Have you thought about, and if you had, have you thought about your staffing patterns with respect to help desk so that you have software and hardware help desk so that kids, if there is a problem, and there's going to be a problem when you roll out all this technology at once, that's just a fact, so that we can, as quickly as possible, address that by kind of concentrating those resources, not for the whole year, but definitely at the beginning of the year, even if we have to get some part-time people.
So that's a great question, and it kind of ties in. I sat on a number of these subcommittees, so I got the chance to see this in a couple of different aspects. Dr. Lynch's subcommittee for devices spoke actually to this matter, and it talked about when we're infusing devices into the elementary school in grade levels where they haven't really existed in great numbers before. There's a great possibility that there will be hardware challenges. So we're going to have to train staff to provide the support at that level. And also we're going to have to provide training on the new technologies. The learning management system is also going to have to be trained for those folks, because we want to be able to troubleshoot. We want to have like a triage level of understanding of technology. What problems can be solved in a classroom? What can be solved by an aide inside the classroom? And what needs to escalate to a IT department? And we have that structure at the middle school and high school level, but we're looking to build it at the elementary level. So it won't happen overnight, but we're going to try and get people up to speed as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Good luck with it.
I just had a question regarding, like, when you purchase a system like a learning management system, is it like a 1-year contract to purchase something like that? Because technology is ever evolving, and let's say we learn a program and then see that for whatever reason it's not meeting our needs. How does something like that work?
So it is a one-year subscription. This was one of the conversations we had on the LMS subcommittee, because we've had some real good discussion as to which product we really want to go for, and do we want to test drive one for a year. The suggestion is not to do that, because you're asking for teachers to invest time into learning a platform and then building content that fits in that platform. And if we were to change, there's very little likelihood you could transport that curricular product to a new platform. So that's why this committee really is deliberating, and they're really having a healthy discussion, because we want to make a really good decision and stick with it. Because there's going to be bumps no matter what platform we choose. There's going to be something that's going to go on, but we want to go in with a mindset that we are committing to a platform instead of test driving one. So.
I just worry because things start one way and years down the road sometimes change and new things evolve, seeing what everyone's using and what they can improve upon, come out with new programs.
Neil, how long would you estimate that it would take for you or whoever's doing the training to train the teachers to use this learning management system? How long would it take? 5 hours, 2 days, 1 day? What is your estimated time frame?
So this is one of the things we've had conversations about. We're looking for an initial training just on using the structure itself as just a warehouse for basic content communication. So that is a relatively short time frame. But all of these systems that we're looking at have a lot of robust tools that are layered in underneath it. So in order to fully train somebody to make full use of all the tools will take quite a long period of time. But they get basic functionality. We're looking to prioritize what skill sets they need to do. So to get full training would take multiple days in order to do it in real depth. But we're not looking for that implementation moving forward for September. We're looking for September is providing the shell, making sure that teachers can get in, students can get in, they can access content. All assignments will be placed in a location that's easily located, and leverage the communication system and the calendar. Now, there's a whole bunch of other really cool tools that talk to Dr. Malekis's curriculum goals, and we're going to get there, but that's not going to be our goal out of the gate. We're looking to get ourselves pointed in the right direction, and then we're going to layer in the additional quality tools.
Thank you.
I think for us, this coming September, it's been a while since we've had two superintendent's conference days in a row in the beginning of the school year. This coming September, we actually have back-to-back superintendent's conference days, so we would be able to use those for training purposes before there's even any contact with students. So that's on our side.
Anything else from any board members? Okay, as we wrap up, Dr. Burek, anything else from you?
No.
Thank you. Again, excellent presentation. Excellent. Yes, Mrs. Hanson.
Okay, I had one thought. So Mr. McDermott, you're talking about running out of the calendar year. One of the requirements, which obviously in the pandemic was waived for the students, is community service hours. Perhaps you could have kids over the summer volunteer to sort of kick the tires on these systems and give you feedback for that purpose. Costs nothing. Costs you. It's your time, but the kids, could get some of their community service hours, going forward. Obviously, I mean, you're not going to get seniors, but the kids coming in, they could knock off a couple of community service hours and do a service. Do really, possibly. Help us out in a real way.
That's a great idea.
That's a very interesting idea, and it'll be good for the students as well, because they'll walk into September with a skill set and that they can help their peers with. So that's a very interesting idea.
Thank you. Thanks.
Being that there does not appear, just to finish up the night one, just a reminder again, the ballots have to be in by Monday. Checking my dates correct.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, see, come in, 9th is a Tuesday. Also, the recommendation from Terry is if you're going to mail these in, you must mail them in by tomorrow. Don't take a chance of waiting until Saturday and hoping it's going to get there. So if you don't get them mailed in tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, there's a mailbox at the administration building. You can leave it right there. If you come in during the day, you can actually drop them off in. So also keeping with the pattern of communication that the district has been doing and the board, we have our next board meeting on the 10th next week. Hopefully we're reporting good news about the election and then doing another update about any events that have changed, because as we've known, everything has been very fluid with this process. And every week we're trying to reinforce the messaging that goes out on Fridays and handle it. And of course, at that time, that will be our regular June board meeting. We'll be able to take questions from the community. One of the things that I wanted to point out earlier, and I had forgot to, and I'm sure Mrs. Marcus will jump into, we talked about technology and how technology is being used. I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge the efforts of Dr. T. In addition to spending a great deal of time with his students, the senior class that he was very close with, keeping them engaged, keeping them involved, giving them hope and understanding of what they're going through. He also, hopefully many of you saw on Channel 12 News, how in honor of the senior class and of the 206 seniors we had, he ran 206 miles, which he finished up today through the high school. So it was a great effort by him that he was doing in honor of the senior class. It was very much appreciated by those students.
And for those of you who don't know who Dr. T is, Dr. Tianaber, he's their virtual enterprise teacher, and it's a double period class. He's really been just a great addition to the school district and the high school. The kids love him. He's, engaging, and what he did, just to honor them and support the senior class was really very special.
Absolutely.
To sum up, just to point out one other effort that I saw, Coach Vinny Tetra, who had the girls varsity lacrosse team, which obviously all of our athletes in the spring sports were cut short. And it was very difficult for many of them knowing they didn't have that final week, that final season with their classmates. Some of these girls have been playing together since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. I just want to acknowledge the effort he put together. He not only had these video conference calls with his team, but he actually engaged them. He gave them assignments, team building assignments. He had the underclassmen asking questions of the underclassmen. He really kept that team unity together throughout the entire process. And I know the girls really appreciated those efforts by him. So I think I just wanted to acknowledge that. Being that there's nothing else, typically every year at the end of this meeting, we remind everybody to show up to vote. At this point, we're going to remind you, make sure you get your ballot into the mail by tomorrow, or better yet, have them dropped off. And we will continue our conversations next Wednesday's board meeting. Thank you. Everyone stay healthy and stay happy.
And thank you all presenters this evening. We appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, administration. Nice seeing all you guys.
Thank you for everyone who worked in those committees.
Great work.